So now let's move on to a little bit of Formula One. This last weekend we had the Barcelona Grand Prix, the Spanish Grand Prix at Barcelona. There we go. Words. Man, this was a boring race. Lewis Hamilton won. Big shocker. He led the race from beginning to end, and there really isn't much to talk about here, except one team who's been sort of the front of the discussion for all of the wrong reasons this year. That is Ferrari. Every time I've talked about Formula One, Ferrari's come up in some way, shape, or form. So what happened during this race, Charles Leclerc spun out at the chicane, and his engine turned off. Later, he would get it started back up, but Ferrari ended up retiring him. So this then means that Sebastian Vettel is the only driver on the grid for Ferrari. He's the only one who has the opportunity to gain points for them. So he's the main guy. All their strategy now goes into Sebastian Vettel. This hasn't happened before this year. And what does he do? He finishes 7th, which is better than I think anyone could have imagined with this car. He had a great drive, to the joy of many F1 fans, including myself. And what this race shows to me is an end to the discussion that I had last week, which is who is to blame between Ferrari or Vettel for the poor results. This week settled that answer for me. So although we'd had an idea that the treatment was lopsided at Ferrari with Seb leaving, we weren't quite sure how much of the poor performances simply came from bad strategy at Ferrari. And Seb really proved this race that he still got it. You know, he dragged this midfield car under poor radio communication to P7. During the race, the telecasters, they will play radio messages from the various teams. And messages between Vettel and Ferrari did not spell any sort of confidence between the pairing. At one point, Vettel was preserving his tires for the end of the race, in whatever scenario he was in, when he gets told by the team to go ahead and push. So what does he do? He pushes, starts gaining some places, things of that nature. Then, a few laps later, the engineer radios in, asking if he could preserve those same tires who he had just been told to push to the end of the race. Talk about miscommunication, man. I mean, this just shows Ferrari has no clue what they're doing with Vettel this year in terms of race strategy, and that they're heavily favoring Leclerc this year, which, once again, I get it, right? Leclerc is their guy going forward. He's the star. He's their star, right? So it does make sense that they would favor Charles Leclerc in this situation. But as an F1 fan, I have to condone the actions Ferrari have had this year with Vettel. They're showing that they don't take kindly to drivers that they don't have interest in. And honestly, who's to say the same won't happen to Carlos Sainz next year if he comes in and has a bad couple of races off the bat? So all I'm saying is, I'm glad I'm not a diehard fan of Ferrari, because otherwise I wouldn't know how to feel in this situation where you have a legend of a driver in Sebastian Vettel who's basically being treated like an afterthought, and a car which is just not performing up to snuff, which you've done before in past years. This is a team that was supposed to be competing for a championship this year, supposed to be challenging the likes of Lewis Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas for that top spot on the grid, when really they're competing with teams such as McLaren for the top spot. So hopefully next year Ferrari can figure it out. If not, I don't know where they go from here. Hopefully their IndyCar ventures work out if they ever go into IndyCar. Anyway, that's all I'm going to talk about with F1 this weekend. Like I said, very boring race. Congrats to Lewis Hamilton for winning for the umpteenth time this year. And that is my review of the Barcelona Spanish Grand Prix.